Good evening, everyone. I was asked to share briefly about myself as I kind of explain my story of how I've connected with Sherry and this ministry. So for me, really, that begins with me working in the private sector for a global energy company for over 2 decades. And during that time, I was seeking God, acknowledging that He had more for me to do in His kingdom. And then in late 2017, 8 years ago, my wife, Tony, and I, Tony's here tonight, thank you, we got involved in Governor Stitt's first gubernatorial campaign. Got to know his team. And after he was sworn in, he appointed me to 2 state boards. So I served on those boards as a volunteer, diligent to learn and participate for 4 years. Then after he was reelected, I felt released to step off the boards, which I did. And I continued to focus on my full-time job, which God blessed. A few months later, though, Governor Stitt asked me to meet with him. The meeting turned into a job interview, and he asked me to be his deputy chief of staff, which I did. I ended up doing, and we did a tremendous amount of work together that winter and the next spring session. And then a few months went by, and the governor called me in and said, "You're doing a great job, Bobek, and I want to promote you, and I want to make you Chief Operating Officer, COO of the state of Oklahoma." So, opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm so grateful for that. And we've helped so many people together, and I believe, and worked positive long-term impacts for many Oklahomans. So, with that in mind, I wanted to share a little bit about him. For those of you that don't know, Governor Stitt is the son of a pastor. He grew up in Norman, and earlier this year, he revitalized the Office of Faith and Community Initiatives here in Oklahoma. And he asked me to become its director. It's a legacy item for him. So that's the role I'm currently in. Now, part of the governor and first lady's priority is prison ministry. And so in this new role, a few months ago, I found out and became aware that the Oklahoma Department of Corrections had opened up and made yard events, Y-A-R-D, yard events, available at the different prisons around the state, and provided unprecedented access for revival type functions. I was up for that challenge, and the Lord placed a Tulsa area church on my heart to partner with. So I went to the senior pastor, and he agreed, and I began coordinating along with Department of Corrections and the church multiple events in different locations around the state. And I want to pause long enough to recognize 2 people that are here tonight that this wouldn't be happening without Leo Brown, who is, I believe, has almost 3 decades with the Department of Corrections in the state of Oklahoma. He's the head chaplain over the whole entire state. And then also the church I'm referring to right across the street is Victory Church. And Pastor Pedro is here tonight. He is their community and outreach pastor and has been the tip of the spear. So thank you both for being here and supporting Empowered Women of God. Now, I realized that I was naive to prison life and to those imprisoned. I learned that the number of incarcerated women in Oklahoma is double the national average, as Sherry just mentioned. But I also learned that approximately 60% of the women incarcerated here in our state have been victims of sexual and physical abuse as children, and 94% have been victims of domestic violence as adults. So that means that, at least I think, that these women didn't just wake up one day and decide to rebel against society, but in fact our prisons are filled with women who were already wounded, already carrying scars that shaped their choices and circumstances. So I invite you just for a moment to picture with me a woman behind bars, not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as a human being, as a daughter, as a mother, as a sister, as someone who once had hopes, laughs, and innocence. And then let's try to imagine for a moment what led her to being in prison. And for many of us, myself included, we assume crime begins with bad choices. But the truth is far more complex and far more heart-wrenching. The vast majority of women who are incarcerated today share a hidden common story that before they ever committed a crime, they were victims of abuse, victims of violence, victims of trauma so deep that survival itself became an act of resilience. So let me say plainly to you tonight that incarceration is often the side effect of unhealed trauma. When a girl grows up in a home where she's told she's worthless, when she's harmed by the very people meant to protect her, when her body is violated and her spirit is crushed, she learns to numb her pain. Sometimes numbing her pain looks like drugs. Sometimes it looks like unhealthy relationships or running away, stealing to survive, or even defending herself in ways that the law just doesn't forgive. Paraphrasing a female inmate here in Oklahoma, and she said, "I'm a victim of domestic violence. I fought back, and my abuser lost his life. That's why I'm in jail. However, while I've been here, I turned my life over to God." I've learned, just like we heard in the video, that many of the women would have died had they not been put in prison. There's some beautiful stories of redemption, freedom, and hope. One such story, and I'm quoting, "My incarceration is a blessing in disguise," she said. "It saved my life from the jaws of fentanyl addiction. I died so many times out there. I became suicidal almost because I couldn't care less if I lived or died. I would have welcomed death. But now I'm grateful to be alive. I love who I'm becoming." She says, "I love the sober me and the sober friends I've acquired. I'm grateful for Jesus who loved me through it and never turned his back on me even when I did." End quote. So now I'd like to talk for a moment about hope. We just heard a wonderful song, by the way, Grady, about hope. I loved that. True hope is more than wishful thinking or blind optimism. It's the steady belief that good can emerge even in the darkest of times. Unlike fleeting desire, true hope is rooted in courage and perseverance. It does not ignore pain or deny reality. Instead, it acknowledges hardship while holding fast to the conviction that change and renewal are possible. Hope is the quiet strength that keeps a person moving forward when the outcome is uncertain and when the path is unclear. True hope also connects people. It inspires compassion and solidarity, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles. It allows communities to rebuild after loss and to dream again after disappointment, and to trust that every act of kindness or resilience can make a difference. Importantly, hope requires action. We just heard Sean talk about this. It's not passively waiting, but it's an active choice to believe and endure. And when grounded in faith, love, and purpose, hope becomes a sustaining force that transforms fear into determination and despair into meaning. In essence, true hope is the light that remains when everything else fades, a light that guides, strengthens, and renews the human spirit in its ongoing search for truth, goodness, and possibility. Hope is the belief that the future can be better than today, and you have the power to make it so. That's actually the science of hope as developed by our very own Dr. Chan Hellman at the University of Oklahoma. What I've learned from Dr. Hellman is hope is not an emotion, it's not a wish, and it's not a feeling. But hope is a science, a choice, and it can definitely be taught. We could all use more hope, wouldn't you agree? And those that have been abused and imprisoned without true healing are hopeless. So many of the wraparound services that our society offers to those that are imprisoned and those that are released from prison, they're great. However, they are supportive in nature. Tonight, we're here to talk about incarcerated women and how we can help break the destructive cycle in their lives. We must spiritually address women's trauma to provide true healing. Many of you might be familiar with a story from the Bible, found in the Gospel of John, chapter 8. The religious leaders of the time brought a woman who they'd caught in adultery to Jesus, who happened to be teaching in their temple. They quoted the Old Testament law to him, where a person found in this type of sin was to be stoned to death. And yet Jesus responded to them by saying, "He that is without sin, let him cast the first stone." Now, the men left, leaving Jesus and the woman standing there. And he asked her, "Are there no more of them that accuse and condemn you?" And she replied, "No." Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn. Go and sin no more." So what just happened there? He got to the root of her issue, and she was willing to change, an act of her free will. It's choices like hers that break destructive cycles in our lives. These choices might seem simple, but take courage, strength, and most often require another person to come alongside to support the change. The system punishes the incarcerated woman for her coping mechanisms while rarely addressing the root of her suffering. But here's the truth I want to proclaim tonight. We cannot punish trauma out of people. We can only heal it. If we are serious about justice, and if we are serious about redemption, then we must get to the root. And the root is always deeper than the crime. It's the wound that comes first. Healing is not just about therapy or medication. Healing is a spiritual act, because abuse doesn't just break the body, it breaks the spirit. It steals trust, dignity, and identity. I thank goodness for second chances. Just sharing a little more about me. When I was a 15-year-old boy from an upper-class middle family here in Oklahoma, I was running with the wrong crowd, and that led us to doing something really bad. We were caught, and I was under house arrest in my parents' home. It's a true story. The night before I was to appear before the district attorney and the judge, my older sister happened to be hosting a Young Life meeting in our home. I was a captive audience in my bedroom adjacent to where the meeting was being held, so I could hear everything. It was then that the adult Young Life leader shared about Christ. Everything he said made me feel like he was talking directly to me. I accepted the Lord and asked him to help me out of my situation, to give me a fresh start. Peace came over me. I went to bed that night and slept well. Awakened the next morning by my mom, who was understandably mad, frustrated, and embarrassed about the trouble I was in. I heard my bedroom door burst open, and she said, "You're the luckiest kid I know. The DA's office just called, and they've not only dropped all charges, but have expunged any record of it." God gave me another chance, and he wants to give all of us another chance. So what does that look like to bring true healing to the incarcerated? First, it looks like seeing them not as their past, but as their potential. Seeing beyond the orange jumpsuit to the child of God within. True healing will allow creating spaces where the incarcerated can name their pain. In the case of these women, it means silence no longer protects the abuser, but truth sets the survivor free. Having a safe space to serve as an incubator for trust creates opportunity for them to share and tell their stories to others who will not judge or condemn, but instead speak truth and life to them. For these victims of physical, sexual, and/or emotional abuse to feel comfortable sharing, we need to help provide an atmosphere for healthy conversation. Again, quoting a female inmate here in Oklahoma, she said, "I struggled for many years to read my Bible because the Bible was read to me during the times I was beaten by my husband. Since beginning my studies with empowered women of God, I am making daily progress with the Bible, and I discover something new about myself in each lesson." Another way of true healing is restoring the soul through counseling, yes, but also through community, through forgiveness, and through faith. Spiritual healing is not about religion alone. It's about reclaiming a sense of worth, of belonging, of hope. It's reminding women, even though they were told they're less than, they really are very valuable. Another female inmate here in Oklahoma said, "My study with empowered women of God has helped me to see that I am not the mistakes I've made. I'm the child of God, forgiven, cherished, and loved, but most of all, worthy of the life that He wants for me." It's beautiful. Remember, the vast majority of these incarcerated women were abused as children and then again as adults. And that abuse led to lives of prostitution, drugs, and violence, which became jail time. So finally, true healing looks like us, those on the outside, refusing to turn away. It looks like advocacy, policy change, mentorship, and compassion. Because when one woman heals, a family heals. When families heal, communities heal. And when communities heal, cycles of incarceration can finally be broken. Empowered Women of God has been and is addressing the needs of incarcerated women. Searching for Love, the mini book that Sherry referred to in the video, shares her powerful personal testimony of how she survived 2 abusive relationships that led her to salvation through Christ. Each copy, as she mentioned, includes a prepaid business reply card that allows the inmates, the recipients, to connect through different milestones in their life, like writing down when they accepted the Lord, prayer requests, or requesting additional information on how they can break the destructive cycles in their life. The postcard initiates a strong communication process centered on building trust and fostering a sense of community. Searching for Love cultivates hope, healing, belonging, and empowerment, ensuring that no one has to walk their journey alone. Those who express interest, as mentioned, are provided with information on how to enroll in Empowered Women of God's correspondence course called the Freedom Project. The Freedom Project is the 30-lesson faith-based correspondence course, and it focuses on essential life skills while fostering a connection with God. Unlike other programs that mainly teach coping skills, this initiative facilitates a true change by spiritually addressing the root issues of trauma that lead women back to abusive relationships. Thereby, these programs, through Empowered Women of God, help reduce the likelihood of recidivism. Now, because testimonies are so powerful, I want to share one more. I quote, and she's here tonight, Kathy, I'm quoting you, Kathy. I read that you said, as a chaplain in a women's prison for 22 years, I've seen many books, large and small, but Searching for Love from Empowered Women of God is one of the best, and it's easily understood, and women are able to relate to each and every chapter. I highly recommend the booklet. Thank you for that. So let's imagine if prison became a sanctuary of healing. Imagine if instead of condemning, we restored. Imagine if instead of locking women away, we unlocked their potential. So in closing, if nearly every incarcerated woman is also a survivor, then every prison is full of untold stories of courage. What would happen if we choose to listen? What would happen if we choose to believe their healing? I believe that's when chains would be broken. I believe that that's when futures would be rewritten. And I believe that's when we would finally begin to see justice, not as punishment, but as restoration. So may we dare to go to the root. May we choose healing over judgment, compassion over condemnation, and love over fear. Because when a woman heals, she does not heal alone, she heals generations. We have an opportunity tonight, folks, to make an amazing positive impact through Empowered Women of God. Please join me. Let's be intentional, let's be generous, and let's make a difference. Thank you.